Welcome back. They were installed for and paid for by taxpayers to keep people safe, but surveillance cameras don't work if they're broken. There are over 65 cameras throughout Sarasota. Nearly a dozen don't work. They're either broken, need maintenance, or are obscured by vegetation. It has become an issue recently after several shootings in Newtown because cameras which could have caught what happened were not working. And joining us for more are ABC 7 reporter Dwayne Lindo and Michael Barfield, the president of the Florida ACLU. And Dwayne, I'm going to start with you because I wanted to see if there was a real sense of frustration in Newtown that you had this series of shootings, and as I just said, a camera that could have caught what happened and who did it simply wasn't working.
Well, you just hit the nail on the head. I mean, there's folks out there that feel that if they had cameras out there that were operable, this would deter some of the gun violence and some of the shootings we've been seeing as of late. So a lot of the residents there are saying, listen, these need to get fixed. We need to get something going, whether it's money that needs to be raised by the city or whatever the case may be. These cameras need to be fixed. And yes, there is a lot of frustration I hear coming from a lot of the residents there.
Michael, whether they work or not need to be repaired, and for how much is one issue. Whether they should be there at all is another. Does the ACLU have concerns about where these cameras are? How many are in particular areas of of Sarasota? How many are elsewhere?
We have concerns that the overwhelming majority of these cameras are in Newtown, minority communities. And we also have concerns that it's one thing to use technology to ferret, uncover crimes, solve crimes. It's another altogether, and a privacy invasion, to use it as a mass surveillance tool. And coupled with license plate readers and other devices that are out there these days, the aggregation of data can be used improperly.
Okay, we are just getting warmed up. Our conversation on the cameras in Sarasota continues. Welcome back. We are talking about surveillance cameras in Sarasota, and joining us for more are ABC 7 reporter Dwayne Lindo and Michael Barfield, of the president of the Florida ACLU. And Michael, I want to pick up on something that you mentioned. Your concern is not whether these cameras can be used to solve crimes where they take place. You're more concerned that they seem to be placed more in areas like Newtown than the rest of the city.
Yeah, it's the old chicken and egg theory that we hear about, well, they're placed there because there's more crime. Well, I have a theory that if you place surveillance technology in locations and more cops in a particular location, you're going to get more crime.
Right, but you're balancing two different things. I would imagine, Dwayne, correct me if I'm wrong, that there are a lot of people who live in Newtown, and we heard from Carolyn Mason, that they want these cameras there because they want to at least have the perception that they feel safe, and that, you know, bad people
Right.
You got to know that, you know, you are on TV, and, you know, don't do anything here.
Right, but at the same time, again, there's folks out there that want to feel safe, have those cameras there, but at the same time, and I know I've had a couple leaders tell me, say, hey, listen, we want these cameras to be used to fight crime or deter crime, and that's it, not for anything else. So I've heard leaders say exactly what Mr. Barfield is saying.
Is there any evidence that these cameras are being used not in the appropriate way in terms of surveillance and in terms of maybe trying to identify people who may have outstanding warrants or so forth?
Well, as far as I know, I spoke with Chief DePino. I was able to speak with her yesterday. Obviously, the city manager, the next budget hearing, according to her, will set money aside to hire someone to maintain these cameras. But as far as she's concerned, I mean, this would be used for fighting crime, so to speak.
Michael, have you heard stories? Do you have any evidence that they're being used in ways that we would not approve of?
It's very difficult because if the records are not available to review because they're considered exempt as a surveillance tool. So they invoke the exemption of a surveillance activities, but yet they claim they're not using them for mass surveillance. I think that's a little disingenuous. Now, Do they use them to ferret out crime? Yes. Do they also use them to spy on people and invade their privacy? I think there have been documented instances of
In
that.
Sarasota?
Not with this particular department, but around the country. So we don't have a problem with them being used correctly, as long as they're not used to surveil people and invade their privacy.
Okay, we are just getting warmed up, and our conversation on surveillance cameras will continue right after a quick break. Welcome back, everyone. We're talking about the surveillance cameras in Sarasota. Many of them are broken, and joining us for more are ABC 7 reporter Dwayne Lindo and Michael Barfield, the president of the Florida ACLU. Dwayne, correct me if I'm wrong, there were about 66 of these cameras distributed around the city. Are they distributed more in one area like Newtown than other parts of the city?
Well, as far as I know, I didn't see a schematic, but as far as I know, there are a couple in Five Points Park, quite a few in Newtown, but they're kind of strategically placed all around the city of Sarasota. So as far as I know, there's the same amount, you have a few in Newtown and kind of the same amount around different parts of the city.
Michael, is there evidence in terms of arrests or police responses to the scenes based upon location that you could determine that there are more responses in Newtown than other areas of the city where these cameras are?
Yes, there's quite a bit of data that the city tracks in terms of not whether it's just simply an arrest, but an incident where police respond, calls for service. You can do it by address, you can even do it by zone. The city is divided into, I think, 10 zones, perhaps 11. But you know, that data can be a bit misleading. You have to break it down a little bit of what it means. Is it a cat in a tree? Is it a domestic disturbance or a gunshot? So you can get that type of detail.
Because when we've done these stories in the past, a lot of our viewers write in saying, well, there are more responses in Newtown because, and the cameras pick up more incidents in Newtown because there are more incidents.
Well, there are more incidents reported, and there are there's historical evidence that the police department, Sarasota Police Department, focuses increased patrols in Newtown. Anytime you have increased patrols, you're going to have increased reporting and observance of even minor criminal activity.
And we want to point out that we did want to have representatives of the police department and also other members of the community here tonight, but there is a big meeting taking place, Dwayne, on a lot of community issues tonight as we speak, and those folks are there to talk about many things, including this.
Right. I mean, given all the activity that's been going on for the past couple months, obviously the chief, this is her second meeting in terms of having the community together to talk about better ways to, unfortunately, without the surveillance cameras at this point, but better ways to alleviate some of the violence that's been happening in the community.
So let's get down to why are so many of these cameras broken and not being maintained in real time, and we're talking about it months after. Is it a money issue? Is it a manpower issue? Whose responsibility is it to maintain these cameras?
Well, according to the chief, it's specifically a money issue. I mean, there's really no money to, I mean, it takes a lot of money to kind of upgrade this technology, according to Chief DePino, and unfortunately, the money's not there, but according to her, in the next budget meeting, that's something they're going to have to talk about.
Is there any evidence in terms of research of what the impact of these cameras could have on the community? I was asking you during the commercial break. London is well known for, maybe you know how many cameras they have. They seemingly thousands of cameras anywhere. Is it effective in places like London in terms of lowering crime and keeping people safe?
Well, there have been studies that have been done that suggest that that's the case. But the empirical data is limited in time that it's been available. And police department doesn't grant access to their data in this regard about how these cameras have or have not ferreted out crime, because they don't want people to foil the technology. There's no doubt that cameras are a deterrent to crime, in my opinion. Body cameras are a deterrent to crime, and fixed stations as well. People in Newtown are entitled to be safe. They're also entitled not to have an illusion of safety that cameras may give.
And one other issue that we have talked about in Sarasota, and actually has been put into place in other places, I believe, in terms of Longboat Key, if I'm correct, is cameras that can take license plates and find people who may have outstanding warrants or vehicles that may be unregistered and so forth. It helps solve a murder case within the last year. But I would imagine that the community would be concerned if there are these cameras, in Newtown or other places of the city taking your license plate number. The city voted to replace its red light cameras, but exclude the tag cameras that can pick up your license plate.
Right. I mean, that's exactly why the city commission declined. I mean, the fact that it's an invasion of privacy. So.
The tag readers, license plate readers, are much more invasive technology, in my opinion, because the data gives a GPS time and date location of where you go, to your friends, to your doctor, to your neighborhood bar, the restaurants that you frequent. And the danger is the aggregation of that data over a long period of time is where privacy violations come in. It's a wonderful tool for a week of data if you need to solve a murder or a crime. But beyond that, its limitations and its uses are for surveillance.
So your concern is not the fact that these cameras exist and can be used to solve crimes. It might be in terms of how long the data is kept.
Absolutely. That's the aggregation is key.
Dwayne, in terms of these cameras that we're talking about tonight, would folks in Newtown and other neighborhoods around here want more cameras and they want them fixed and better maintained? We've had this terrible, series of shootings over the last few weeks and months that really has the community on edge.
Look, like I said, I spoke with a couple community members yesterday, and they championed the idea of getting these cameras fixed. I mean, again, but the one thing that is of concern is the fact that they're used to deter crime and also find, if there's a crime committed, look for the person or persons involved in that particular crime. But if it's used for anything else, that would be a no-no for a lot of folks that I spoke to last night.
And in terms of the money issue, is the city commission working on money to fix these cameras, replace them, improve the technology, maybe even buy more?
Well, again, according to Chief DePino, they may, the next budget hearing, they may be someone appointed to look after and maintain these cameras and make sure that they're all operable at some point.
Okay. Michael, did you have one more comment?
Well, I don't think these cameras all broke at the same time. I think that there are reports that I've seen over the years that camera so-and-so is down. To me, I think that this has been a long-standing issue, not one where they all went kaput last week.
Absolutely. We'll have to leave it there. We want to thank our guests, ABC 7 reporter Dwayne Lindo and Michael Barfield, the president of the Florida ACLU.